Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to another episode of the MuscleMind podcast. I'm joined by the lovely Cody Robinson today. How are we doing today, man?
Doing well.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little more awake than you are at the moment. But
Probably so. You're probably right. I've been up. Yeah, it was a late night last night.
3 cups of coffee, you'll get kicked in about halfway through.
Yeah, that's right. Pretty much. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the effects of self-efficacy. I wonder how many times I'm going to mess that up.
No, I think you'll get it. It's I don't know. It took me a long time to learn it.
Self-efficacy. Such a hard word for me to say for some reason. Maybe because it's like
it doesn't. It's well, you think efficiency a lot of times, but that's not what it is. I mean, truly, what self-efficacy is, bottom line, no matter what the topic is your confidence in your ability to follow through and achieve something.
Boom.
So naturally today, I think we're going to really tie it into fitness and maybe some nutrition stuff or whatever. But this, I mean, it was established like back in the 80s. So I won't get too nerdy.
Nerd out, man. People love it. Everybody loves when Cody nerds out. I'm serious.
Frankly, I love it too. But
that's right.
That's why I'm glad we're doing this stuff. But no, so, I studied behavioral theory for I don't know how many years at this point. So looking at different approaches to help with behavior change, no matter what it is. It could be fitness, it could be diet, it could be like for the world of public health or whatever, it could be smoking cessation or whatever it is, or just a long line of stuff. But anyway, there was a guy back in, I think it's like 85. His name's Albert Bandura. So he come up with this what they call a construct, or this behavioral theory that you can basically take point by point to try and help with behavioral change. Most people have heard of like we call the trans-theoretical model, but it's like that's your nerdy. Yeah, it is. It's TTM stuff, whatever. But like most people for that one, they know like contemplators, like pre-contemplators, like you hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think more so in fitness. This one's a little bit different, but to me is probably the most important. Anyway, what are your thoughts before we jump into it?
Yeah, so basically for everyone that's out there listening, self-efficacy is essentially the belief that you can do something.
Right.
Now, that doesn't necessarily, correct me if I'm wrong, apply to just the fitness scope. It can be applied to your career, basically any aspect of your life.
That's true. I know I kind of kept it in the health world, but yeah, it could be your follow through with your career if it needs to be ramped up or changed, or behaviors with your family, or relationships or those types of things.
Right.
It truly can be broken down. And as we do this here in a second, you'll kind of nitpick a little more. I think it will make sense. And it was we've been wanting to kind of get into the health behavior stuff a little bit more. We've been doing a lot of the physiological stuff. We kind of wanted to switch it a little bit up today.
Yeah, I mean, as far as being mentally strong and mentally able to perform at a high level is just as important as physically being able to.
I think there's parallels.
Or more important.
I see parallels. Yeah, a lot of times I'm going to say probably more important. I see parallels in it because you think of fitness regimens. Our last podcast we talked about the intermittent fasting and how you plan everything else in your life. Why shouldn't you plan your food?
Right.
Well, why shouldn't you plan your behavior?
Sure.
When people start planning out your behavior and mapping out your, how you react to certain things or preparing it, that's when you start to see waves of change in your life. That's why I'm so hung up on like health behavior.
Right. Yeah, and I find this stuff incredibly fascinating. You're obviously a lot more versed in it than I am, but I find it incredibly, and I think a lot of people will find it fascinating because just the reasons of why you think a certain way, why you do things a certain way, why your brain reacts to things a certain way, why you have confidence. Some people have confidence working out.
Yeah.
Some people don't have confidence.
Some don't, or it's not even the working out. It might be more so of working out in front of somebody else. Mm-hmm. Or if you're working out by yourself. Yeah, so there's so many ways. I think our listeners, and thanks to everybody who's really jumping on this podcast.
Oh, for sure.
We're ecstatic that we have so many people listening, so we want to give you some good content.
Yeah.
I think you are thinkers. You are trying to make, be more productive in your life and, optimize your life as your lead-in says on this stuff.
Right.
So anyway, we can kind of jump into what they call the constructs of
it. So there's 5 of them, right?
Yeah, I mean,
essentially there's more.
There can be more or less, but we're going to hang up on 5
of them today. Okay, so we're going to start with performance experience. Okay, so essentially performance experiences are basically your past experiences, correct?
Right.
What's worked for you in the past, what has not worked for you in the past. Give us an example of what a performance experience would be in reference to?
Well, I think for me, there's two things that just popped into my head. One actually is food related, like the people who have tried so many different diets in their life,
right,
and they feel like none of them has succeeded, and obviously it can go much deeper than that.
Right.
People tend to blame the diet versus our own behaviors or our application of the diet. So that's one thing. So the next thing you lead into, you're already going to feel less confident that you're going to do this next diet, which we talk about. When we talk about intermittent fasting, that's not a diet. That's actually
pattern of eating.
That's why I think a lot of people can benefit from that as well. So then, like fitness, though. Okay, let's say for example, last year was a good year for you. You dropped 20 pounds. You were feeling good, so you did succeed at that time frame. Okay, let's say something come up. Either you got injured, you had to move, job change, you got a new baby. I know a lot of our people, they're on great tracks, and then their family starts to grow, and obviously that takes priority over your own personal health.
Yeah.
So you can, when you get back into wanting to start back up your fitness regimen, you can look at that and say, well, I've done it before.
Right.
So I do have a strong sense of confidence to be able to do it again.
And what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
That's a great point.
So that's kind of a big.
That's important too, leading into the holidays.
Yeah.
People like to kind of, if I was talking with a client the other day about, kind of just maintaining through the holidays and just knowing what you've done in the past, what works well. I didn't even think about, this angle to it, but it kind of makes sense now. It's sticking to what you know and what works.
Yeah.
What doesn't work, especially with working out and, as far as what you eat and nutrition, that's very important.
Well, that's what we say, as health coaches, which I know that's still like a word that people are still struggling to understand. What is a health coach? You think it's a lifestyle coach? What is it? But a true health coach, we want you to think through this stuff ahead of time, in advance.
Right.
Like everybody's so reactive. It's like, oh, Thanksgiving's here. I know I shouldn't do it.
That's right.
I'm going to eat some more. But if you're like, okay, you already know who's going to bring what from family members. You already know what you're probably going to dive into the most, or what's going to be the schedule of the day. And if you think about it, you're already going to be thinking about, okay, maybe I'll drink a little more water ahead of time so I'm not so bloated.
That's true. You know what's coming.
That's the thing. We just encourage you to look ahead, so you can make those decisions, mentally prepare yourself ahead of time. But anyway, that's where I was going with that. So
it makes sense. Anything else on performance experience?
Not that I can.
There's so many angles we can go on it, but that's the general basis of what exactly the performance experience angle of self-efficacy is.
Right. You got it. Boom.
Yeah. So now let's talk about vicarious experiment. This is a big one for me.
Yeah.
And this is essentially, in a nutshell, if someone can do it, then so can I. You hear the term all the time, living your life vicariously through so-and-so or whatever. I know whenever I was little, my uncle was he was in the Army and I always wanted to do something like that. Like, I want to be like him. Not even thinking about, living vicariously through him. Like, oh, that must be so cool to do this and that. And, then obviously I went and I joined the Marine Corps or whatever. But even being a personal trainer, seeing people that's what they did for a living, I'm like, that must be really, really neat, living kind of vicariously through them. We all do that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we do it all the time, and it can be positive or negative. I mean, in your response. So like the vicarious experience can be. So let's stay on the positive end first. Like you said, let's say you see somebody who's so inspirational to you, like they were 200 pounds or whatever. They've just been through the ringer, or they've or they've been through the ringer, or just whatever, and they've just finally made the decision to make this change. There's a lot of times for me, I see people who are so successful or have achieved so much, and then it seems like the people who have been the most resilient, who have gone through some of the toughest times,
that's true. Yeah,
have led them to be able to overcome it. So if I'm looking at their experiences and comparing it to mine, I'm like, I don't have it nowhere near as like the struggles.
That's right.
So therefore, I should be able to. So then I encourage you to look at that stuff from that, or you can also look at it as like the kind of the topics and stuff that we're giving up to people. We give examples of other people who have succeeded, or ways that they've been able to break through barriers of getting on a regular fitness regimen or whatever. You can take examples for them. Now, a negative version of vicarious experience is, let's say, okay, you've considered doing CrossFit before, but then like 4 people who've injured their shoulders, so therefore you don't necessarily feel confident that you could do CrossFit or whatever. So those are kind of two ends of the spectrum on that one.
That is really interesting to look at it from a negative perspective. Like a lot of things, whenever things like this pop into my head, I always think about more or less the positive sides and like the
Which
negatives.
is good. That says a lot about your personality. That's why you have a drive and success.
And to look at it from like a negative perception of, CrossFit being a great example of something like that. And it probably affects people if, whether or not they do certain things or not, which ultimately it shouldn't, obviously, because you should experience it yourself and see if it's right for you. But looking at it from that angle, it definitely changes perspective.
And CrossFit was pops in its
it could be anything.
It could actually be personal training in general. Because there are a lot of, unfortunately, there's just not very good trainers out there. And so you'll get people, it's like, I've tried trainers before, and I was hurt, or I had a friend of mine who now they have back problems and they're set back, and I don't know if I should trust it or not.
Right.
So that's kind of more the negative. But back on the positive, you hear,
lost 30 pounds with a trainer.
Or like for you, my personal philosophy from health and fitness is to empower people to where they don't have to depend on me and they can continue on.
Right.
And I know that sounds crazy. It's like you're trying to put yourself out of business.
Right,
but what happens is, if they get on those good tracks, then their friends or family or whatever kind of see that, and so then they want to be a part of that growth, and so then they have gone through the vicarious experience that
through them. That's true.
Your friend, my friend, has got great success with you. I want to go ahead. I'm confident with you in this scenario that I could actually achieve the goals I don't want to achieve.
Right. Yeah, it's great. I mean, if you put it in words like that, not even thinking about.
I love this stuff.
I know, man. This guy's all about it. I love this. I find this stuff very interesting. Like I said, Cody's a lot more well-versed and experienced in this. But it's like you said, man, it's stuff that it's stuff you do on a daily basis that you don't think about, or you don't know that there were actual terms and definitions to.
Or even full fields of study on it.
Right. So, vicarious experiences, we got performance experience. Now let's talk about social persuasion. Now this is a big one in the day the era that we live in, with social media, with people being so opinionated and people saying, exactly what they think, tell them about their experiences, everything like that. So tell us exactly what is social persuasion, which is essentially internal and external motivation.
Right, yeah. You're so right on that.
Did I take your words that you had?
No. I'm glad you did.
That's funny.
No, my head. Originally, we were first thinking about it. You're talking about behavior and your internal behaviors and your external behaviors. But sometimes, you have things going on in your life that can also get in the way of what we call barriers to exercise or whatever. It's like, maybe you feel like your job is too much. Maybe you feel like you need to spend more time with family, which clearly you do.
Right.
Or you don't have access to a gym, or the biggest thing we hear is, I don't have time.
Yeah.
But if you look at like family and friends or people who maybe are not supporting your journeys to try and improve your health, that's one of the things that I've learned a lot about over the years is different cultural barriers. Like if I'm going home to family dinners and they're like, why are you losing weight? Eat another one of these. Like that's a kind of a negative social persuasion.
Right.
On that. But like on the positive side, like from an internal, like some people are stronger, have stronger internal motivations. They can just get up and go and make those changes.
Right.
I hear a lot of people say, when people's talking about, I lose 10 pounds, well, just go freaking lose 10 pounds.
Sure.
And if it were that easy, we wouldn't be talking about behavioral theory.
That's right. Well, a lot of that too, I know, one of my clients, she had been struggling with the social support at home, which is a big thing. She's trying to lose some weight, and her family and, certain family members aren't as supportive as she would love them to be. And I think that does play, especially in the health and fitness. And if you're trying to do some big weight loss transformation, or you're trying to do something new, or, put yourself out there, like we were talking about, not feeling comfortable working out with a trainer and like a gym. If you don't have that social support, it can really affect your results and impact your mental capacity to kind of take that new challenge head on.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that people, I don't think they really stop and think through. I had a client, same thing, lost a tremendous amount of weight, was making overhauls of, and but he had a natural, really good intrinsic. He was like, whatever, I don't care if I've got, because they would have actual donuts on the counter when he bought their house, and he was like, screw it, I don't care, right. I'm not going to eat it, even though that's my biggest weakness. That's, so that's the internal. Now some though, it's harder for others, and that's okay. And so like the external motivation can come from like a personal trainer or a health coach. Ones that are in your corner that are trying to help get you through these barriers.
You gotta latch onto them.
Right. Yeah, and surround yourself with those people. That's anything, not even just fitness. That's just, it can be business, that could be your career, whatever, relationships.
So would that be considered internal or external?
So external,
as far as like a family social support with some kind of.
So so you can take a little. You can say intrinsic and external. Well, intrinsic and external. Yeah, like motivation. Family is external. So internal is like how you can motivate
like
yourself.
Mentally yourself.
Yeah.
Like if you get up in the morning and it's it's snowing today, I'm not going to go to the gym. Like that's more of an internal.
Yeah, that's still your like internal motivation. Like it's a lower end of motivation, which also means that's why it affects your level of efficacy, because you're like, okay, I'm not going to feel like doing it, so I don't have confidence. It's like people, it's like, okay, we match somebody up with a trainer or whatever. It's like, I ask them, what time of day do you perform best? They're like, I could try mornings.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you tell me you could try mornings, it tells me mornings is not going to be a good option.
Yeah, right.
So that's the internal. The family and the other things is the external. But we're talking about before we started this, how social media can actually be a positive impact from an external motivator. It could also be a breakdown.
It could be a massive breakdown.
You have the body shaming, and you have the other stuff like that.
I know a lot of people suffer from looking at themselves and the transition that they've made. Instead of appreciating what they're doing, they scroll on Instagram, look at that explore page, and see someone who is out here looking like she's doing a show tomorrow. It's not. It affects you internally more, I think, a lot more than you actually think it does. Yeah. Because it can kind of set you back in your own path and in your own journey of saying, I've got a long way to go. Yeah, and now you start thinking about, all kind of stuff.
Yeah, it can really prevent you from like giving yourself the credit that
you really deserve yourself. That's right.
So true. But then I've had other people who I know who have used like social media for that motivation. So, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds. Hey, because they have a good social support system. Social support doesn't always have to be in person. It can be online or whatever. Like, hey, help hold me accountable, or that encouragement. Or I think when people really flip into even more of a drive is when they say, hey, you've been a motivation for me.
Exactly.
You've stepped out. Now I've stepped out to do more.
It's funny that now that I think about it, I was laying on my couch yesterday. I was just laying down and trying to take a little cat nap, and I was looking at my Instagram, and one of my clients had posted a video of her working out, and immediately got up and went to the gym.
I gotta work out.
I gotta go work out. That's definitely like a social persuasion. It persuaded me to go and do what I knew that I should be doing at the time. I didn't use that as like a negative barrier for myself. I was like, that she's doing it, I can do it. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, on that. Yeah, no, I completely agree. On that note, I think it's a good time to kind of hit pause for the people that do flip through Instagram, Facebook, or Snap or whatever, and kind of have that like it feels like a punch in the gut, to when you see somebody that seems to be right where they want to be physically or whatever, or even because there's so much of it is so staged anyway.
Like the booty pics that girls put on Instagram, or the guys are all jacked. You gotta understand they just worked out. Yeah, they're all pumped up. Their ass looks awesome because they just did 100 squats. Like that's not what they're
right. Yeah. And you got filters galore, and you don't even know that these could have been pictures from 4 years ago, and they might be 20 pounds overweight now.
You're right.
So I'm just saying that stuff, or the ones that do have the really good personalities and that you are a driving force. Like think of it, everybody had to start somewhere.
That's right.
You're on your own journey. Like, do not let that
derail what you're doing.
Derail is the best way.
And it can. Yeah. It really can. I mean, it can be very harmful. But it could also be very impactful.
Right. It can be. It can be a positive. It can have a positive impact.
I think you got to find out what triggers you.
Right.
I think if you know that if you're scrolling through Instagram, Facebook, Snap, whatever, and you see someone that you just get I don't know, you start feeling bad about yourself, then maybe you want to stay away from those type of things. Figure out, if it's find something that does motivate you. Whether that be like before and after pictures, all you got to do is you can find like 1 million of them. Find out what, instead of, because honestly saying giving up social media and things is a hard thing to be like, I'm just going to give up social media.
Well,
it's impossible.
When people are taught, they say that when it's like they're negatively influenced versus thinking of it the positive influence.
Find out what actually does motivate you, and that way you don't have to.
And how you can use it to your level. You're going to have groups you could find or whatever, different hashtags.
Heather.
She was the one I was about to plug.
She was telling me yesterday. Heather Brown, she's one of our brand ambassadors.
My Life Well Loved.
Yeah, my Life Well Loved. She was telling me that they did a squat, and me and her actually had a conversation about this, and we were talking about the explosion of personal training and fitness now in 2018 as we go into 2019. And I said, if you look at last year around this time compared to this year, it's exponentially different. There's more. People are working out more. People are hiring trainers more. People are going to these box gyms more. They're investing money into their health and their fitness. It's almost like a status. It's almost like a thing, to be working out with someone.
Which I'm happy about.
For sure. And we were discussing, like last year they had like a group of ladies that they do this thing around this time of year, and she had like 600, and she said, well, this year we have 1,500.
And
I'm like, because it's growing. Like people are finding ways to motivate themselves through social media for their benefit. It's crazy.
I think we can do a whole
I
think we need to do a whole one just on the world of just social media.
The
good, the
good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh, and the reality of it.
It's like the reality is the big thing.
The no filter, or the 20
the angles,
the 20 pictures of angles to get that perfect one.
That's right. It exists, man.
There's an art. There's
an art, and you're playing yourself a fool if you don't think that way.
But get in there and play around with like some of the hashtags of like the motivation. Find stuff like that and use it to your advantage.
It's a great idea. All right, imaginal experiences. This is something I know I do.
Good.
Often. I always imagine myself kind of where I want to be. And obviously, I'm not sure if this applies to this particular one, but where I used to be as well. I guess it could kind of fall into that.
What I was going to say, and it's so funny that you bring that. I don't want to, and you can definitely dive deep. This is your podcast, however deep you want to go. But I was thinking about the speech that Matthew McConaughey made on something like a few years back. And somebody asked him, who is your, who's your inspiration? Who's your motivation? He said, myself 10 years from now.
Right.
He said, and I said that 10 years ago. And who's myself 10 years from today is my motivation.
It's true.
And honestly, it's so phenomenal because you're so unique that you can't.
If you sit down and you think about it, where you were I know myself, being in Birmingham for as long as I have, how much I've personally grown, not just in business wise, but just, as a man or however you want to put it. And imagine myself how I was back then and how stupid I was or the decisions I made, but it all kind of leads up to where you are, kind of now. And imagine where you're going to be 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now. It's really fun. I think it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's key. And another thing is like, you're set by visualizing this and where you want it to be, and it's not. Who knows? I mean, where you're going to truly end up, or if anything, hopefully you'll be even higher than you can imagine yourself. And that's actually one thing. Don't sell yourself short on your imagination, too. Like on where you want to see. Like really reach for that.
It's hard though, and I think
it is.
It's hard because essentially what I know we're all about, especially on this podcast, we're all about goals and establishing where you are, being real with yourself. Like, I think a lot of people lie to themselves.
Now it gets you nowhere. Or it slows you down.
Right. And it's very hard to sit there and literally self-evaluate yourself and imagine where you legitimately want to be a year from now. Not where you where you think you are now, but you're really not, and where you want to be, and so on and so forth. It's being realistic about imagining where you want to be.
It is hard, and sometimes it can be, you can kind of discourage yourself. Don't keep it on the positive, keep it on where you want, and what it does. And this is the reason I think it's good. It's not, as my dad used to say, it doesn't mean it now because he actually has a legitimate physical business, but he always said, Like in the country, a lot of people would say years ago that you're just building air castles. It's imagining things that they don't think they're ever going to have.
Right.
That's not successful. I mean,
Right.
but when you start trying to put down concrete like thoughts of where you really do want to be, it turns your brain on this process of preparation. Like that's what leads to these short-term goals.
Right.
If you don't set these long-term goals, you're not going to establish the short-term, the day-to-day that's going to impact, the end result that you want to get to. Now, obviously, right now we're talking about just your life as a whole.
Yeah.
But if you pull it back into like fitness, imagine what you would look like. If you're trying to lose 20 pounds, like imagine what you would look like in that. What you would want to wear, what kind of clothes, like
go buy the clothes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I've heard people that do that. They'll go get it with their
hang it up right there. When you get up, you see it.
Right.
I mean, that's you got to find. And you're right. It has a lot to do with every scope. Like if you imagine yourself buying a house in the next year,
that's me.
something
I'm
like
there.
that.
I'm not a homeowner, but that's where I'm at.
Right. And if you kind of to pull it back from the health, pull it back into the health and fitness aspect from a professional standpoint. If you're a personal trainer and you envision yourself, you want to maybe get certified and you want to start training in 2019. Well, imagine yourself and be real with yourself about where you're at right now, what you have to do to get certified, what you have to do to pick up clients. You need to start doing an Instagram page. Imagine these different steps that you have to do to get into the health and
because your brain is so complex that when you start to imagine it, like the reality starts to set it, the actions start to.
What's it called? It's called something, man. It's right on the tip of my dang tongue.
The what now?
Whenever you imagine something and it comes to fruition, you believe that if you imagine something, it comes to fruition.
Well, I mean,
there's
certain levels on that. There's like what they talk about. The secret was like
the secret. Yeah,
but that's so extreme.
Yeah.
That's almost to the point where it's like. I believe in getting a jumbo jet.
Right, and that's going to happen.
And these people, but not to discredit that. I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of truth and support. Like the most successful people, and of course, people tend to look at the most successful people where they're at now. I enjoy reading their books or listening to their stuff. 10 years ago when they're actually talking about the struggles or the journeys they're taking.
Well, like Jim Carrey.
Oh man,
Jim Carrey wrote himself a $10 million check and said he's going to cash it in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think within that next year or two, he came out with like 3 blockbuster movies, The Mask and Ace Ventura and something else, and then he cashed that check.
But when you put a hard thing, and we're all about writing stuff down. I mean, Matt's got a whole sheet of paper that was blank here about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But you write this stuff down too. I don't know. Your brain holds on to it even when you sleep. It starts to kind of these preparations for it. Anyway, we're getting way out there, which I love.
You have to be real with yourself, though. That's
true.
That's the main thing. I think a lot of people lie to themselves internally about where they are and where they're at and what they've done, and you really can't do that. You have to be honest with yourself. If you're, even if you can go far as like even if you're in debt or even if you have been unfaithful and you're whatever, man, you got to be real. Imagine yourself getting out of that certain situation, positive or negative, and then moving on.
Well, and you can use these other steps. I mean, our primary thing, about self-efficacy, if you sit there and if you imagine that you can achieve these things, then obviously that's going to affect your positive, like your belief in yourself is going to be higher.
Sure.
And some people don't take the time to do it, but when they do it, it does kind of ramp up. Now you might sit down and do it, and you kind of feeling negative that day, and you're like, well, I haven't achieved the goals that I wanted to last. Anyway, there's just so many ways.
There's a lot we can really.
But I really do think it's if you've never really done it, and it may sound silly or whatever, sit down for 10 minutes, and in a quiet place or whatever, and just
be honest with yourself.
Just really be honest with yourself, but then also think of where you want to see yourself.
I mean, you could even look at it as break yourself down and then build yourself back up. Break yourself down by being honest, labeling everything out that you've got going on, and whether that be positive or negative, break yourself down, and then how you're going to build yourself. I mean, man, we could get deeper.
Well, one more on this, and it makes me think about Tim Ferriss. I love Tim Ferriss. Like he does this thing. I don't recommend everybody do it because some people it's like it freaks them out so bad. But like it's from the Stoics, like from the Stoic philosophy. But what he does, like if there's something that he is fearful of, he does all these things that like scare him. He's going to do it. Well, he sits down and actually thinks through and even writes out, I think, the worst case scenario. The absolute, why are you afraid of, what's your fear of losing 20 pounds or whatever?
Yeah.
You know, like what's the worst case scenario? You don't achieve it. I don't know. There's just so many ways, but you really do think of worst, like for a business owner, you know, what's the worst case scenario? Going bankrupt or going under or losing people's jobs or whatever. Yeah, all that stuff. But instead of avoiding it, you've already let yourself kind of go through that mental process. So now you can just kind of kick that fear to the side and you
That's
just
a good
move
point.
on.
That's impactful. I think that would help. That would help everyone's life, obviously, but that's very impactful to sit there. That's literally being as honest with yourself as you can.
That's what made me think about it. I think avoidance. Oh man, there's
That's
a whole book I wanted to write on like people.
You wanted to write?
Yeah,
Cody, you can't do everything, man.
we're working on it. I'm
Still young.
I want to visualize myself here. But no, as far as like people just living in denial.
Yeah, they do, man.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I think everyone is.
But just be true to yourself. Don't beat up on yourself, and just look where you're at. Look where you want to go.
Bingo.
Anyway.
All right, that's a good one. Physical and emotional states.
This is experience of physical and emotional sensations. What's some of the first things kind of pop into your head on this one?
Physical and emotional states. I mean, as far as
tied to, if you think of it being tied to like your confidence, like your belief in able to achieve.
Well, I mean,
like fitness or whatever.
Okay, you say like working out. You know what like Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say. He loves working out because he loves to pump.
Yeah,
that could be a physical state.
That's it. Yeah, so what we were talking about. Sorry.
No.
What we were talking about before this was, the two ways that you can look at it. Like some people talk about how much they loathe, I hate working out. Oh, I hate working out. Because it seems so much like a chore to them. So that's already a negative emotional attachment to working out.
Yeah.
But what do most people say when they finish that workout?
They feel great.
They feel great. They feel more confident for the day, whatever. And that's the positive emotional state. So that's when you're really weighing out your confidence level. Let's say you're on the fence or whatever. You have to really tap in and think on, I'm gonna feel better when I'm done. I'm going. Yeah. That's for me for productivity. Like this year, last year, beginning of the year was pretty tough. Last year was, just there's a lot of changes going on, so it's pretty tough. So I didn't work out, as consistent as I was. But I do just as much, if not more, for that positive surge, that productivity of it, how it actually makes me actually get through the rest of the day, versus just trying to lose some weight or whatever.
Well, a lot of people, that's why a lot of, you'll sit there and if you just look up the wealthiest people in the world or the most successful business people in the world, the number one thing it's going to say is most of them exercise early in the morning because of how it makes them feel.
Right.
That's an emotional state. It's carrying you throughout the rest of your day. And obviously that affects the, physical state as well, but that's why I like to exercise.
Yeah.
I like the way it makes me feel in the moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily, for me, it doesn't necessarily make me feel good, a certain way after or whatever, but I like how it feels during exercise.
Well, we've talked about before, you're going to want to go a few different directions on this one, but like body image. Yeah. We talk a lot about body image, and this is actually proven. So I've studied a good bit on body image dissatisfaction. It's just like, it seems like hardly anybody's, rarely fully satisfied with the way they look, but some are in a lot worse, scenarios. But anyway, so this has been proven to, let's say, if you start, walking or whatever, if you're starting from a very foundational standpoint, which is good. Foundational means you can build and progress from it. But it has shown, like, if way you visualize yourself right now, and if you're not, exercising whatever regularly, if you start doing it within like a few days, actually sometimes even the same day, even if your weight hasn't changed, even if, inches hasn't moved down or up if you're trying to grow or whatever, you will start to feel more confident in the way that you look in the mirror. And that's it, because then that is the psychophysiological impact of the physical and how it starts to rewire your brain.
It's so true though. I mean, that's you of course, us doing a lot of personal training, and any of the personal trainer that's listening, you'll know if you get like a new client, and that within the first week they're like, oh, I feel like $1 million. Well, you've only worked out 2 times, but you feel awesome. That explains it right there, and that's why exercise is the number one thing you need to do for yourself, because it does improve every aspect of your life. But that's a good point. And you know, people work out just a couple of times and you automatically, like, your brain is like, damn, I look better, I feel better, I'm sleeping better, my sex drive's higher, I'm having more energy throughout the day. It's just a switch goes off.
It does. I mean, that's
you haven't really made a physical change yet.
Not fully. Well, as far as like an aesthetics change.
Right, aesthetic change. Yeah.
But as far as internally, I mean, you release the endorphins. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You really pump up your feel good hormones, and therefore that's why my biggest thing is for people just to move, to start doing whatever it is, even if it's not fitness. Like if it's like make moving on diet, make moving on career or whatever. If you start heading in that direction, it will start to, your confidence will build, and these things will start to change. But like in your body, it's like these hormones are released and these improve, so therefore you're going to sleep better, your inflammation goes down, therefore you feel better. It's just your blood pressure. I don't know. There's so many ways you can take it.
There's a lot of ways you can take it,
but we're going a lot deep on.
Well, yeah. But I mean, there is a lot of ways you can take it, especially and what we're talking about here for everyone that's listening. This is not one particular order. I want to.
Right. These are different areas. I think you can pick one, whatever works best for you, and play around with each of these, because all in all, if you actually,
and some of them tie in together.
Well, they can
definitely link in together. But as far as this one, perfect example. Someone asked me why I listen to podcasts so much. Like, I love personal development, books and podcasts and YouTube videos and things like that. That's an emotional state. It gets me understanding that I have more things that I can improve on, I can do better, change about how I'm doing it to take that next step in my life. That's an emotional state. It
also means you really like vicarious experience, because you're listening to what people has been successful at or gone through.
Right.
And therefore that drives you to be more confident and actually say, if they can do it, I can do it.
It's exactly, that's why I started this podcast. So we started. I always wanted to, because I listen to people do it all the time. I'm like, well, hell, I can do that.
I want to help people too. I mean, I
mean, it's, if you talk about, different topics unapologetically, I think, and this one's this can go really deep.
Yeah, it can go a lot.
Self-efficacy, I mean, you could go really, really deep, but a lot of it, to kind of pull it all back together, it's being, upfront and honest with you. I think the main takeaway that I would have just from me in this podcast, learning from this podcast, is not lying to yourself. Yeah. Which I think so many people do that. Yeah. In that you touched on the body image issue. People will, you kind of tie that back to the social persuasion. If you're looking on Instagram, if you've lost 20 pounds, you're eating better, but you see someone else is doing a better job, but you don't realize they've been doing it for 2 years longer than you have. That kind of can affect your mental state as far as your own personal journey.
Right. Yeah, it can be negative or positive. And so hopefully some of the tips that we've given you today, you'll actually take more of the positive and kind of move your meter on where you are as far as your confidence on your personal confidence in being able to achieve whatever the goal is. If it's fitness related, if it's nutrition related, if it's professionally related, whatever. And that's the biggest thing is self-efficacy. Yeah. We're planning to update the website, the MuscleMind podcast. It's like a redirect, so you should be able to find some videos and some some audio stuff on there. But I think I may actually find a link
because, in the show notes,
of the notes. But there's also like assessments of like personal self-efficacy, like a questionnaire that gives you feedback on where you really are. So you're talking about trying to assess yourself and be true to yourself. Sometimes you need at least a tool to say, oh, maybe I'm not where I need to be on these different.
That's a good point, and I think a lot of people don't know where to start on something like this.
And sometimes it's a tool. I'm huge on tools. That's why I use apps all the time or whatever.
I know. This guy sends me a new app every day. He does. Use this? Yeah, he does.
But I use it as a tool. I don't get fixated on it, or like if it helps me kind of get through it or whatever. I think that's something we'll try to get that out to everybody. So kind of a quick recap on these constructs just to follow up. So the main point obviously is self-efficacy, your confidence in your ability to achieve something. We talked about performance experience. What are your past experiences have been like? If they've been good, if they've been bad, how can you overcome them? Vicarious experience, observed experience or modeling by others. This also can be something to where it can prevent you from having to go through a lot of these stumbling blocks and fails. Like listen to what successful people are telling you and go ahead and just bypass all the crap and get on the right journey. Social persuasion, which can be internal and external motivation, but more so external. Like it could be your family, it could be social media, the negative and positive impacts on that. Imaginal experience, visualizations of future success. Huge on that. And as Matt hit home on,
that's a deep one.
Be true to yourself and be honest with yourself, because that's the only way you're going to be able to move forward. And then physical and emotional states, whatever your goal or that you're trying to achieve, like think of all those. Think of the positive, think of the negatives. But then when you identify the positives, harness those in order for you to continue building your confidence and moving forward on all that.
What a phenomenal summary.
Thanks.
That's just freaking amazing. And honestly, it's a great time, man, because the end of the year is coming. It's a really good time to evaluate yourself.
Awareness is key going into a new year.
Yeah, I listened to Gary Vee. Mm-hmm. The guy's big on really pushing hard towards the end of the year, and he was talking about doubling down the rest of the year while everyone else is just kind of lollygagging, going through the motions.
That's where I'm at this year.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm challenging everyone to do, is to really work twice as hard the rest of the year.
Well, it's like, the other example I've used, I apologize for us going a little bit long today, but like apparently this has hit a lot of good parts on us, but it's like that example of the runner, that would, just kept getting beat, even though he'd lead the pack the whole way of the whole race. And somebody finally told him, the reason you're losing at the very, very end is because you're looking back over your shoulder, and it causes you to slow down.
Right.
So it's like, if you just focus on the end mark, focus on the goals that you set in January of this year, because you got 6 more weeks.
That's right.
What's 6 more weeks? That's a long time.
And the thing is especially if you're in business, most businesses right now literally go through the motions.
Yeah.
And then I know there's things that you haven't accomplished this year, whether that be personal, business, whatever. There's things you have not accomplished that you wanted to this year, so you might as well freaking do it.
How much weight can you safely lose in 4 weeks? Would you say? For the average person,
safe would be what, a pound and a half a week.
Yeah.
So you could lose an extra, I don't know, if you really busted it out, you could really lose an extra 8 to 10 pounds.
That's what I want you. That's the thing. It's not over. Anyway,
it's not over. That's right.
It's not over.
Awesome.
Not over till it's over.
Well, thanks for listening to this pretty good episode right here, guys. Make sure you guys keep sharing it. It really helps when you guys screenshot it and put it on your Instagram story. Tag us in. Subscribe to it. Make sure you guys rate us. Leave us reviews on iTunes. It always helps. And also remember, Home Fit is a proud sponsor of us as well, but they are 10% off the rest of the year. They're having a really big Black Friday sale. Mm-hmm. They'll probably run the weekend of Black Friday, so make sure you guys are telling your friends and family about that. And you guys have a phenomenal rest of the weekend, and you will hear from us next week.
Boom. Go forth and be confident.
Boom.